Okay, today I'm going to give you our final thoughts on this curriculum from Masterbooks, Language Lessons for Living, grade 7. Welcome to Learning with Boys. My name is Rachel. I am a homeschool mom. We are on our 17th year. I'm on my last son of 4 boys I've graduated to. I have a 7th grader and I have another senior this school year. And I'm doing some reviews on the curriculum we have used this school year. I did the one for math, Learn Math Fast, and I did one for our science, Exploration Education of Physical Science for middle school and can be used for high school. So check those out if you haven't seen those. But I know this is probably one of the more popular curriculums, and maybe that's why I tried it. Not really sure. But I did want to give it a chance, and I want to tell you our final end of the year review, our thoughts on this curriculum. Now, one of the questions is this a full language arts curriculum? And I definitely want to say it is. You have everything from writing. They're going to really do a gentle introduction to writing, and then they get into some different types of writing like persuasive, comparison, book reports, and several more. And if you really want to know all the details, you can actually look at what is in the book online. I'm pretty sure you can look at the scope and sequence and see what is offered. They have grammar from just very beginning introduction to all the parts of speech, and then it gets into clauses, dependent, independent, talks about verb agreement. Once a week, you are working on some depth of grammar. And then there is narration. There is some vocabulary, or spelling is, I think it's a little bit of both. So to me, it definitely has a little bit of everything. But I think for us, the problem, and I don't want to say a little bit, because in the end, you're learning a lot, but the little bit is weekly. Like one day you have a little bit of this and one day you have a little bit of that. But I feel like it's just enough to whet the appetite, but it doesn't satisfy the hunger. So I think that is really what it comes down to for this particular curriculum. Now, I haven't been using the curriculum all these years. I don't know what the other books offer. But so I'm going to just be talking about the 7th grade. And I do feel like when you get into 8th, 9th, 10th, there may be some similarities. I think there's some differences too, so I could be wrong about that. But I'm pretty sure you can look at the scope and sequence on any of them, and probably definitely samples. Now, this is a 5-day-a-week program, and I will read on the back what they are. First day, on day 1, there's 5 days. It is special feature, vocabulary, words, and scripture memory. So each week it's going to be a little bit different, but very similar. You're going to be doing some narrations or descriptive writing about whether maybe it's a picture. You may be doing some poetry. My son would read some poems or a hymn and maybe finish it, maybe write a final verse for it, which he actually enjoyed that a little bit, which I was glad. I enjoyed poetry, but all my boys have not. There is some scripture where you might want to write something descriptive. Maybe they talk about the flood, and maybe it's a picture study. I'm just sort of flipping through here to remember everything. There are books. You might read a section from the book, and in your own words, what does the writer of this quote love about scripture? So that actually, he filled that one out, and there was a couple other questions. Nothing in depth. Now, I will show you. Sometimes they give you a lot of space, and he doesn't write much. But the thought of what he wrote was in depth enough for me to think he understood. He did a picture study, and it talked about what it was. And then they say, think about a story in history that you would like to tell the future generation using a drawing. Well, he loves World War I and II, and he enjoys planes. So that was pretty simple for him. So that was more of a sketch. It's not drawings too much. They do give you the option to draw, especially if you have a child that maybe struggles with writing, physically or does not enjoy writing. I'm just trying to give you a few examples. There are times, actually we pulled this one out today, and it was from a book, and it was something that Jim Elliott was talking about, and then asking the question of write an argument. Now this is later on in the book, so this isn't the very beginning of the writing. And it was fine what it said, but it was more of something we just discussed. What his thoughts, what he thought it meant, what he thought it said. So he didn't actually even write anything on this page. So that is sort of how that worked. And on the back, there's always vocabulary and a scripture memory verse that you will use for that week. And majority of the time, the vocabulary is from the front of the page of the narration. Not all the time. It depends on what it is, if it's a picture study or something like that. So that is day one. And really that has been a good experience for him because, like I said, I've learned that he's enjoyed poetry and hymns, and it's really helped his thought process about seeing where he was at and understanding and comprehending things, whether I made him write it or whether we just discussed it, which we did sometimes. So day two is grammar and punctuation. Now that would be the day that you are working on the grammar. And it is just one day. And I think this is the area that a lot of people have asked, what about the grammar? And I'm going to be honest. I feel like because I talked to him about it, he just felt like he wasn't getting anywhere with it. I mean, you talk about it one day, and then at the end of the week, it is brought up again in what they call a review, which is sort of like just reviewing or testing over everything that you learned that week, including the vocabulary. Each day gives you something each day that you went over. So, and a lot of it at the beginning was things he was familiar with. But once it's getting into some things that are a little bit more like, okay, I understand this, but then if I go a few days without talking about it, I need to be reminded again. So that is really not emphasizing or helping him in his grammar. So I would say that is something that we really struggled with. And especially, I think if you are just, this is a first introduction to grammar, I feel like there is definitely you are going to need more practice. Now, in the back, there are some pages like I pulled out when he was doing his review that would have like the parts of speech. And there's more pages that you can pull out. This is the irregular verb page and it talking about it. So he could look at it and review it before he had to start or answer questions again. And even the next week, it just introduces something new. I don't think it ever reviews what you've already talked about. I'm questioning myself on that. Maybe in the parts of speech, but I'm the type that would be like, well, go ahead and mark the subject and verb so you can find whatever they're asking for. But I can't remember if it asks them to do that each time, which I don't think it did. So that is my thought on the grammar. So if there was a way, you could take some of these pages and review with them, just have them read through it each day for that week that they're learning about something, that would be helpful. But it is something that you have to discipline them to do on their own if you want them to do it independently, or you have to do it and include it in your time with them. So on day 3 is the communication is what they call, and there are several, and that's more of your writing. And really he's learned a lot through the writing. He enjoys writing, so let me put it that way. I did have a question about the writing, and I'm going to actually read it right here. It was on one of my other videos, but I thought I'd put it on here because she said, I'm considering this curriculum because there seems to be a lot of writing. But in your opinion, do you think the amount of writing would be tiresome or too guided? She enjoys, she's talking about her child, writing more when she wants and what she wants to write. And I do understand that. This makes it hard for her to take corrections from me as the teacher. I'm wondering if something like IEW or video-based would work better. And she asks a few questions about that. So about the writing, I really think the writing part is a good introduction. But again, I need to step back and look at it from the point of view of a child that doesn't like writing. If you like writing, even like she has a daughter that enjoys writing on her own. Like my son does a lot of writing outside of this curriculum. But this helps him. And I told him, I said, you do great, you write a lot, but he needs to learn to write correctly. He needs to learn about his audience. He needs to learn, the proper way to do it and, not make it so boring. So I think this gives you some beginning steps, like the different types of paper, like the comparison paper. And that was fun for him to do. He actually, a lot of what he writes about has to do with history or like World War II or things like that even. So he uses a lot of what he enjoys and what's interesting to him in the writings. So that is very helpful. Again, you can look at the scope and sequence and see the different things that they will teach you. But again, it's just, well, I want to say with that, sometimes it's carried over to the next week. They'll say, so you've learned like an essay and they want you to finish it, or they'll add some things to it. So sometimes that is carried over to the next week, maybe even 3. I feel like one of them was carried over for 3 different weeks. So they're getting you to write a draft and a final draft, but it's very small amount. It's not like you're writing a huge paper or anything. And the first day with the narration, that's a small introduction to writing. They have on day 4 is the Worldview. In the beginning, it was really talking about like the books of the Bible, learning the books of the Bible, reading specific passages from Genesis, and writing what you read about. So that was, to me, very similar to the narration, just writing what you're reading about. And for us, and I talked about this in my last video, I did like a little bit of an update on this. It does give other information. Like there's one thing in here, why only 66 books, but again, in the back, you're reading some more scripture and writing a narration. So for me, my son already does a Bible curriculum. Because my son was doing so much already in the morning, like he took some time to read his Bible, sometimes a couple chapters, but not usually that much. And then he would read some application to it. So that just ended up being too much to the point where we just sort of skipped that 4th day. And we continued to do that for a while. Now, they do get into where I think they're adding in the Bible and adding in some literature components, maybe some terminology and things like that. Okay, and the last day, which is day 5, is just the review page. They have you recite the Bible verse, use your spelling index card, so you are making cards, and we didn't go to that extent. But in the back, there's a pretty thick section of your spelling words and vocabulary and all kinds of helpful information. I do appreciate that. There's a lot of information in the back. Now, for our first year using it, I had to learn that and figure that out. But that's how it is with all curriculum. That's why I always encourage parents, especially if it's a new curriculum, but even every year, because things do progress as they get older if you're using the same curriculum, to make sure as the teacher you go through it. So I am learning that there is a lot of helpful things in the back of the book. There is not a teacher book, but there is an answer key for things like the review page and things like that. So vocabulary, grammar review, communication review, list the 5 ways to add a variety to your topic sentence. So they do go into, and I didn't mention that in the writing, like they do talk about the topic and the body and the ending and how to indent paragraphs. I mean, every little detail, they do help you through that. So that is good. And then just a worldview, whatever you may have done. And this week it was the books of the Bible and what they are talking about. So you just did like a matching. So that is the program in itself. Okay, so that was a lot of information. And I do have 2 other videos. I have the introduction where I really just look through the book. And then I have our mid-year review of it. So this is our final review at the end of the year. And I guess really, I know you're probably wondering, are you going to continue this, Rachel? And we are not. Am I glad we used it? I am. I'm glad. I feel like he learned some things through this book that I may have missed, especially in the writing. And I really enjoyed the narration part of it. It really gave us a lot of good discussions. And a lot of it, he wrote down things that I wasn't sure what he would write, and then he would surprise me. So I'm really thankful for that. I'm glad I didn't miss out on that. So it's not that I feel like we missed anything this school year, except maybe I don't feel like the grammar got reviewed as I would have liked. So he knows a lot, but I feel like that is probably something I need to definitely work on this next school year before he enters high school. And when I decided on this curriculum, I decided to do it this school year because I thought if I'm going to try something new, I need to do it this year in case I need to make sure I want him to where he needs to be in 8th grade, ready for 9th. I feel like this worked well for the school year. Honestly, I don't think we're going to finish the book. We're going to keep working through it, and I'm actually going to be picking and choosing what I want him to work on. I'm sort of at that point at the end of the school year. I'm going to take advantage of the good things in here that I want him to use. So, and a lot of that is probably the writing. I think if I were to redo it all over again, that I would probably pick something extra for grammar. But see, that's not me. I want an all-in-one curriculum. So like I said, it is all in one, but it's in very small bites. So we were able to pull some things out and make some things work and learn some new things this school year. So, all right. I do appreciate you all watching. Again, I have a couple reviews that I'll link below, and hopefully I'm going to have some more reviews and my 8th grade picks videos coming out soon. All right. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we will talk to you again soon.